This podcast may contain explicit language. I'm somebody now, Harry. Everybody likes me. Soon, millions of people will see me, and they'll all like me. Requiem for a Dream is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
What, no quippy line this time?
What?
You couldn't think of anything?
It doesn't have the impact if you do it every time.
I think people are expecting it now.
Okay.
I mean, build some space for yourself within the show. You keep complaining that you don't have enough to do.
Okay,
Boy.
well, all right. I'll try and work on it for next time.
Oh, thanks. Be a good little schoolboy for us. Tonight, for our 285th episode, we discuss Requiem for a Dream from 2000, celebrating its 25th anniversary. Written and directed by Darren Aronofsky, with the author of the original source material, Hubert Selby Jr., cinematography by Matthew Libatique, music by Clint Marcel, starring Ellen Burstyn as Sara Goldfarb, Jared Leto as Harry Goldfarb, Jennifer Connelly as Marion Silver, Marlon Wayans as Tyrone C. Love, Christopher McDonald as Tappy Tibbins, and Mark Margolis as Mr. Rabinowitz. Background for the movie: Requiem for a Dream was released on October 6th, 2000, after first debuting at the Cannes Film Festival earlier that year. On a reported budget of $4.5 million, the film would gross nearly $7.4 million, finishing as the number 157th at the worldwide box office that year. Critics were mostly positive, if not a little squeamish towards the film, but Ellen Burstyn was nominated for Best Actress at the Oscars the following year. In a 2016 International Critics poll conducted by the BBC, Requiem for a Dream was tied with Tony Erdmann from 2016 and Carlos from 2010 at 100th place in a list of the 100 greatest motion pictures since 2000. The film was listed as the 29th best edited film of all time in a 2012 survey by members of the Motion Picture Editors Guild. In 2025, it was one of the films voted for the Reader's Choice edition of the New York Times' list of the 100 best films of the 21st century, finishing at number 116. Requiem for a Dream currently holds an 80% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 71 score on Metacritic, and a 4.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Now, of course, we cannot do this by ourselves, so we bring in our lauded guest. Now the newest member of the Revisionist Almanac crew as their senior European correspondent, the Question Queen herself, making her second appearance on the show to date. Please welcome back Heather Stewart.
I'm Heather Stewart, not Albert Einstein. Hi, it's great to be back. You not got the quotes. Got the quotes.
I guess I missed that one in watching the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, it's because it's not on the IMDb quote list, you see, that's why. But nope, there you go. It's in the scene with Harry, which we'll be talking about later. Yeah. Anyway, hi, great to be back. It's been a while, but
yeah, I believe about
a year.
13 months ago.
No,
The Life of Brian was the last time you were on. Yeah.
Yep. This is a very different film.
So
just a bit.
A lot has happened between the three of us since that point in time. And you've obviously now taken on a new role that I was, let's say, motivated by a particular interested party in announcing for you your new role. Do you want to tell us about what you're going to be doing with the Revisionist Almanac here coming up?
Sure. Yeah. So, on the Revisionist Almanac belongs in the capable hands, of course, of our friend Andrew Corns. He asked if I wanted to get more involved, not just asking 25 questions a week month for the Revisionist Oscar shows, but maybe giving more of a kind of European angle, reporting on, maybe award shows in Europe or what's going on over here in the film industry. I said, sure. And then also came up with some ideas of maybe covering the current awards season, which I just get far too involved in. And, already started thinking about a film's Oscar prospects when it first comes out in March, which is just sick, really. But that's the way my brain works. So doing more of that. Also maybe doing kind of joint episodes occasionally with Andrew, so it's not just him alone in his, man pod cave. So see where that goes. Got a number of ideas. Maybe, top 5s, top 10s of certain, he does anyway, but maybe the couple will be the two of us doing that as well. So it won't just be him speaking into the void for some of those shows. Basically, that's the idea. So
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sounds interesting, and I implore people to certainly follow along in whatever the next iteration or next chapter is of Andrew's show and all the things that he has coming up. I know that by the time this episode comes out, he will have his big announcement that he's been advertising across social media here very, very soon, which I'm aware of because, we're part of the inner circle, the inner sanctum, if you will. But I'm looking forward to seeing everybody else's reaction to what's going on with all of this. Now, that being said, and when I kind of alluded to it a moment ago, we have to plug a very big thank you to you in particular as part of the organizing committee of the Cinema Legacy Poll, which has become, I would say, one of the big things that has turned a lot of people onto our show in very recent months since we compiled and gathered everything up, and the 39 ballots that eventually were submitted, including by the three of us. But you've been in on this project since May, when we first started to really wrap our minds around this and try to formulate exactly how we were going to do everything. And you've been very instrumental to that process. But most specifically, you helped tabulate all of the ballots.
Yes.
So we want to recognize you here for all of your work that you went through in order to provide that, both for our show, but also for the greater film community, and listening to all of the 39 people who participated in this. And I think we've said it before that I believe this is very much a community project. And I know it's presented on our show, partly because we went through a lot of the legwork to try and pick it up, but that certainly would not have happened without your efforts. So thank you.
Of course. And I just say, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and 7 different ways of writing Jaws in the lists. It was can there be 7 different ways of writing Jaws? But yes.
Yeah, Jaws by itself as a name, Jaws with the year, Jaws with
the director and the year, just the director in capitals, because my AI tool was picking up all the different iterations, so it was picking up capitals. If somebody had written it with all small case, and then people who didn't write such fun. You're all kind of like experience in real time my kind of, oh my god, somebody's written Shawshank Redemption and not the Shawshank Redemption. It's mucked up everything. Yeah. And then we did actually have that other pair of eyes at the very end as well, because I think it was one film that I'd missed that somebody had listed in its original French title, and I just missed it. I was like, no. I think it was Breathless or something. And
yeah.
And I was like, no. But that's why it was a team effort, right? That's why we were all there kind of just checking everything. So it all worked out in the end, and great list so far.
Yes, thank you. And it was not a team effort with compilation because we wanted it done right, so I did not participate.
Yes, math is definitely not your strong suit, Dad. Which begs the question why you offer to help every show.
Because, I just thought I would try to help with some of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, you've certainly done that.
That was fun. A fun project, yep. And obviously we know the full list, but we're not there yet.
Yes, there's only a few select people, obviously yourself being one of them, for tabulating everything, that knows the full contents of the list. I think is something to be said for doing this piecemeal and teasing this over the life of everything that's gone on up to this point. I think if you just dump the list the way that Sight and Sound does, yes, you pour over it, and it's maybe a week's worth of conversation. And certainly some people will pick up films that they haven't necessarily watched before. I think there were a lot of John Dielman first watches after the most recent Sight and Sound poll. But
unfortunately,
I haven't seen it.
Well, if you'd like, I can give you 3 minutes and save yourself 4 hours.
It wasn't 4 hours. You keep saying that. It wasn't 4 hours.
It seemed 4 hours.
Because we both had COVID. And we never took a break. We did not pause the movie at all. We watched it straight through.
It just seemed 4 hours.
Well, you had COVID. Wow.
I know. It was it was not the best conditions to be doing that.
Let's just say I enjoyed COVID more.
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. No, I agree with you, though, because I think we've also seen, like, in the socials that people have been reacting to each of the roughly 10, that's been released each week.
Right.
And either specifically to that film or generally what they think or quote, memories. And I don't think they would do that if everything just came out in one go, because it's been a separate post on whatever platform on each of the films. And so people have been able to, pick which one they want to make a comment about or have a relationship with, or in, my case, I tend to pick the ones that I had on my own list. Yeah, so it's been, I think engagement wise, it's been really, really good. Yeah, I mean, I know you've got plans to continue it slightly different, maybe lists or genres or whatever you decide to do. But yeah, I think it's certainly, I think it's got definitely, I mean, I would say it's got definitely more listeners to your show. I know the numbers are doing great, and I think it's certainly been as not just that, but it's helped, absolutely.
Yes, we're very thankful for all of the engagement across socials, for everything that's gone on with the list so far, and everything else of the attention that's been coming to the show. I think we're always stuck in this thought of, especially because of how the podcast started, which was we both were wearing lapel mics and recording on a cell phone, the initial first episode across a table from each other. And it was just something we sat down and were like, all right, we watched the movie. We're just going to kind of come up with the concept. And from there, it's evolved into this whole other thing 6 years later that we set our watches by, quite literally, in our week. Every day is basically planned on the schedule of doing these 50 episodes a year. And so it's just kind of interesting sometimes to look back on where you've gone and where you might still go. But you are correct. We are planning to do more iterations of this. It may not be the exact same thing where it's the best 50 in your individual list. We may just do it by either a decade or a genre or some other things. But I think what we're going to do is post that to the community and kind of let them decide what the next version is. And then maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, we'll come back around and do this version of the poll again, just to continually update it. But I think this is something that has legs to continue to be renewed pretty often. And I think of it very much in the same way that the AFI did all of their lists in the mid 2000s, where they had like the top 100 movie musicals or the top, genre films, or they had the top scores of all time or the top 100 quotes of all time, things of that nature. I think we could very easily revisit some of those as well, because, and I don't mean to parcel out that, everything that existed before some of those lists were bad necessarily, but there's also been 20 years of movies to add to that. And while we only have one film currently on the list from this decade, which we'll get to later on this episode, there are a lot of movies from the 2010s and the 2000s that are also a part of that list that I think, because of their recency, weren't included in some of the AFI material.
I mean, I have said this as well, and this. I do have a lot from this century, but I think revisiting it again and 5-10 years, it might even be more from this century. It's just hard to say because, to your point, there is one film, which we'll discuss later, from this decade. Everything else is just so hard to say what kind of a legacy or influences it's going to have. That was my criteria. I mean, there's films probably from this year, from last year, whatever, that I've probably enjoyed more than, and I think are brilliantly made films, than maybe some of the ones that are on my list near the end. But I just think with one of the criteria being, influence and legacy, I couldn't necessarily put them on. But will I do that in 5 years' time? Maybe. Where's the cutoff? So, I mean, I put the film that we're discussing or later on.
I think all three of us had it in our top 50, the one we'll be discussing later on today.
Yeah. And that was the most recent one that I went with. Everything else, I was just like, yeah, great films, but I don't know what the legacy is going to be or the influence. So that was my criteria there.
But we're a quarter hour into the show and we have yet to really discuss Requiem for a Dream. So I suppose we should get around to it sometime today before we lose the entire audience for the evening.
Here for us to talk about Jared Leto because they love him so much.
So is this the quintessential bottoming out movie? The one everyone would point to as, if you want to see somebody absolutely at their lowest point, this is the movie.
The only other one I could come up with is the Nicolas Cage film.
Leaving Las Vegas?
Leaving Las Vegas?
Leaving Las Vegas.
So The Lost Weekend ends on a good note, and we'll be talking about that in a few weeks. That was one I thought of because I think a lot of the cycles of this movie are very similar to that. I also thought about, I know I haven't seen the movie, but I know its reputation, Trainspotting, I think might be in part of that conversation. But for my money, I don't know if the only other one I could come up with was Midnight Cowboy. But even that, I don't think quite gets at the real true despair at the end of this film.
So I kind of made a face with Trainspotting because at the end of Trainspotting, you haven't seen it, but it is also it's a positive ending for the main character. If he's not the nicest person and what he does at the end is not great, but it is for him a hopeful ending. And yeah, that's the thing. A lot of them do end on that hopeful note, like you say, which makes it very different to this one. But again, another question that we will be discussing, is there hope for any of these characters at the very end?
It's an important thing to mention that for a bottoming out film, the person has to stay alive. It's not a bottoming out film if they die as a result of the situation, because that doesn't linger. What the bottoming out films are about is having to deal with the ramifications over the long haul of your previous actions.
Yeah, and I suppose that's why Trainspotting lends itself to a sequel, and I can't imagine there'd be a sequel to this movie. Like, what possible avenue or piece of the story would you have to tell that goes further beyond where we're at by the end of this movie?
One-armed Jared Leto becomes a drug counselor?
But what interest in the story, how does that further this particular story? I mean, yes, that could be an offshoot where it's a completely different version of the character.
Well, he ends up trying to ultimately save Jennifer Connelly after 25 years of drug addiction.
That just sounds like a Liam Neeson movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the whole point is that that's what they want to show, and why there wouldn't ever be a sequel is they just want to show that is their life now. That is what it is. And it's the result of their choices or being taken advantage of or whatever. And they kind of have to live with it. And they seem, I don't know, I mean, there's Jennifer Connelly at the end, it's her face when she gets her drugs and that smile, this is what she wants. She's kind of almost happy with herself for having what she's done. And it's just shocking. And Ellen Burstyn, what are you going to do with that character? That character is ruined. That woman is ruined. there's nothing there anymore. So
Yeah.
where's that going to go? That's not going to go anywhere. So, yeah.
So, Dad, this is another one of the movies that I put on here knowing that neither of us had seen it and that I wanted to expose us to, let's say. The reason that I even really knew about the film or went out of my way to try and put it on the schedule was, and you've met my friend Jeff, who is from my cinema discussion group.
Yes.
Which is basically book club, but for movies. And I think he said, I can't remember when and in what context, but the reason that Aronofsky is like his favorite director is because this was his first film that like opened his eyes to the wider world of cinema. And he's up there with Andrew of the people that have seen the most wide variety of films. I think Andrew has him beat on total depth and the just general volume. But I want to say they're pretty equal on the variety of different things. Jeff is obviously a connoisseur, if you will, of a lot of various different international cinema and eras of cinema that are way beyond some of my own personal tastes at times. But he said that this was his like film education, Dorothy stepping through the door to Oz moment. And so I thought, all right, this is worth trying to see what he saw necessarily in that. So what are your first impressions, since this is the first time for either of us?
I have 3 first impressions. 1, overall, it's a quality film. Number 2, this is a situation where, like in grade school, when you get the 64 box of Crayolas, you try to use every color you can in the box. This is so over the top. I think somebody should have tapped Aronofsky on the shoulder and said, dial it back just a tad. It's a little too much.
Before you get to your third point, it reminds me your example there of, do you remember when we went to the Coca-Cola Museum in Atlanta? And
Yes.
Me and my 2 exchange brothers decided we wanted to drink a shot from each one of the fountains at every fountain in every continent while we were there, and we all 3 got sick.
Yes, it was like 110 different types of Coca-Cola drink.
And there were so many bad ones.
Oh, yeah.
Just awful.
Yeah, there were a lot. It was like there was some sort of like coconut one from South America or Africa. And I mean, it was some stuff that I'm like, ugh.
The Asian ones got really hard. I don't know why we selected for those to go like second to last, but my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Anyway.
So that's my second point. And my third point is, how does Jared Leto continue to get cast? I mean, he so overacts everything he does.
Yeah, his accent work in here is just, well.
Although I have to say, this is one of his better performances.
That's fair. I would tend to agree, but this is like him winning Best Supporting Actor, and then like this, and then there's like a wide gap between the next set of films.
I do not like the lack of appreciation for House of Gucci here. Come on.
Well, I can honestly say that if you were to put the current version of Nick Cage in a film with Jared Leto, I would go no matter what it was, just for the laughs. It could be on a school shooting and it would still end up being funny.
Oh,
because,
Dad, come on. Too far. Too far.
Right, too far. So it could be about a shipwreck and it would be funny.
Yes. If it was 3 guys who really appreciated the song The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I guess my first impressions, I was not from the music video era where a lot of these had like very specific directed music videos behind them. And so like the MTV generation is just ahead of me. I know that there are many in my friend group, our community, that are probably like 39, 40, or coming very close to 40, like 30 days from now, that are much more in tune with like rap videos and hip hop videos than I am. And the way that he directs this is very famously kind of like that. And so while I got a recognition and an appreciation for the style that he was giving, it was just really disorienting. And I think intentionally so.
That's the point, I think. Yeah.
But I had a hard time at times following the thematic elements to exactly what he was trying to say. And to me, this is another one of these where it doesn't connect with me technically because it's a vibes element. You have to feel like what it is to be on heroin or drugs or whatever, methamphetamines, I guess, in one case in this. And I guess I just don't feel that. There are very few vibes films that I just generally vibe with. It may help if I went back and watched it a second time, but I have 0% interest in watching it again.
I have a hard time with films that are about self-destruction.
Yes.
Because that's the nature of my practice in a large extent. I did criminal defense for a number of years, and now I'm in disability law, where some people it's, because of problems or circumstances, some people it's by life choices. And it's just disheartening and not enjoyable for me to watch it as entertainment. It's one of the reasons why when I get home and it's been a long day, especially during the week, I tend to migrate towards comedy because I don't need anything heavier or more depressing. So this one I have a hard time with because of that.
I would agree on the standpoint that I appreciate much more redemption or resurrection than just people mired in their circumstances. Yes, you can say all of these are just based on bad choices. I think there is a very good argument to say that all the people in this film do it to themselves. But I don't find that to be the case with the wide variety of people that are put in this situation. I find that there are a lot more socioeconomic elements that aren't necessarily discussed in this film. And I don't think that's the point of the film either. So it would be kind of improper for that to become an element. But these people all sweep themselves up into this delusion of what their lives could be and that it might be benefited somehow by drugs. It ends up destroying them. And so I can appreciate that element of the film, but it just didn't hit me in the way that I'm going to say something like, what was the Chalamet film from a
Beautiful Boy?
Beautiful Boy. I took that much differently because of the relationship between the father and son than I ever would something like this.
Well, all four of these stories are completely from different angles. We have one character who comes from a rich, wealthy family who disassociates herself from it and falls into this. We have one that comes from a low-end ghetto type background and is trying to survive it. We have one that lost the role model, the key member of the family that kind of had guidance and control over the family and got left adrift. And we have one that, because of her own desires to try to change herself or her life, fell into the trap. So they come at it from four completely different angles.
So, Dad, do you have a plot summary ready for us?
Yes. In Requiem for a Dream, 4 residents of Coney Island chase transformative dreams at any cost. Sara Goldfarb, Ellen Burstyn, a lonely widow, becomes obsessed with appearing on her favorite TV show and resorts to prescription diet pills. Her son Harry, Jared Leto, his girlfriend Marion, Jennifer Connelly, and his best friend, Tyrone, Marlon Wayans, Envision striking it rich as drug dealers, fueling their ambitions with heroin and amphetamines. As each character's dependency deepens, their utopian visions shatter, plunging them into a harrowing spiral of addiction and despair.
Thank you, Dad. Okay, so what is the movie about? I think we've tangentially discussed it. Mine came down to a single word: addiction. I think you could also say obsession, but I think both of those work here. And frankly, to me, it's the parallel ways in which the one story is the traditional drug-seeking behavior, the person who wants to pull themselves out of certain circumstances and thinks drugs can be the avenue by which they go through it. And the other one is just, I guess, a late stage, I want to be somebody, or this delusion of grandeur that they use drugs in order to make it easier on themselves as opposed to doing the work of trying to get to that point. And so her obsession then becomes mirrored on the other side.
I think I'm going to come out more positive on this, which is no surprise to any of us, liking bleak films as I do.
Yes.
To me, it is about, obviously it's about despair. We've already said there's no point in having a sequel to it because that's the whole point, that there is no hope really at the end. Although, let's say, we may discuss that later on. But to me, it's about the title of it, Requiem for a Dream. If we look at this specifically, they're all chasing this dream in a way, or they've got a memory of this dream. So it's either Sarah who wants to get in that red dress, which she makes, that for her is an emblem of getting back to her younger self when she was happy, when her husband was alive, when Harry was a good son, because he's really crap one now. But that memory and, wanting to be in television, everything is focused on that red dress, and that is her, that's the pinnacle of what she's aiming for because of what it represents. And then you've got Tyrone, who has that memory of his mother, who I think has passed. I think that's what it's implying in the film, or at least there's no contact there anymore. He's got the memory of the good times with her, and that's what he wants to maybe get back to. And you've got Marion, who has her dream of being a fashion designer, which, yeah, that's not happening either at the end. I'm not quite sure what Harry's motivations are, but, maybe it's to be a good actor. I have no idea. But he also, he just wants to get on in life and make money, right, by whatever means. So that title is to me actually what the film is actually about. Now, you may say, okay, I don't relate to any of the characters or anything at all, but maybe if we take a step back and think, well, what is motivating them? I mean, I'm coming from a position of mid-40s, closer to 50 than I'd like to, admit. I can certainly look at this and say, God, what has gone on with these crow's feet? What's going on? Want to look younger, be younger, whatever. I'm not going to go and do anything about it. I'm not going to put in Botox or anything, but the signs are there, and it's how you deal with that. And some people deal with it well, and some people don't, or just anything. I think it's coming from a point of, we want to do drugs, we want to do this, and we want to fall back, and we want to have this horrible situation. I don't think it's that. I know I said it was all their choices, but a lot of it is external influence as well. I mean, how easily Sarah is taken advantage of, by the TV company or by, the doctor who won't even look at her, and he just wants to give her the pills. It's a very tragic circumstance. In particular, I think Sarah as well is the real. They're all tragic situations in a way, but I think she is the real tragedy, because to her she's the one with that big dream. She means well, and she's just taken advantage of, really, by through naivety or whatever, or all her friends who want to help her and are getting. It's just really sad. But that's why I think, even if you say I can't relate to any of these characters, which I totally get. I mean, I can. I've never taken drugs in my life, like, ever. Apart from alcohol and coffee or whatever you want to call it. Nothing, nothing. But there's still parts of most of these characters where you can kind of understand how they got there. And there's parts of them that you can relate to. Not the drugs, but...
I do feel empathy for these characters. I can't sympathize because, like yourself, I think the hardest I've ever done is some weed occasionally, and it's been a long time since I've done any. I want to say 12 years. So I haven't even done like a recreational gummy that have become much more popular and widely available in the last 12 years or so. At best, Wisconsin is a very hard drinking state. That's been usually my thing of choice. But even then, I haven't really gotten trashed since my cousin's wedding. So my ability to relate to some of the circumstances, and frankly, I'll even say from a socioeconomic background, I am at worst probably upper middle class based on my father's income levels and the privileges and opportunities I've otherwise been given in also growing up while going to public school, a fairly well-to-do area. And so from that standpoint, it's really difficult for me to just understand the poverty and the abject struggle that a lot of the people in this movie seem to be going through.
The one thing I would notice is, and I'm going to make an analogy. I saw an interview once where somebody asked Christoph Waltz how he can play evil so well. And his comment, he kind of looks surprised. He says, well, I don't play evil. I play a character. And the character, the method or what happens with the character ultimately leads to the character being evil. In this particular case, none of these people sought out to become addicted. What they did is they put themselves in circumstances where their dreams ultimately led to their addictions.
So, Dad, what is your history of drug use?
I didn't drink alcohol until it was my 18th birthday, which was legal in Wisconsin at the time. I've never tried marijuana. I've never tried any other drug, although I did, while I was in college, have a group of friends who were all PKs, pastors' kids, who like to smoke pot, and we would argue and debate religion and politics for hours on end. So I'm probably sure I got enough secondhand smoke that I probably got high without really realizing it, but I was consuming large amounts of vodka at the time, so probably didn't realize it. That's the extent of it. So, and it's primarily because the history of problems in my family is so high that I tried to avoid anything that I thought was overly addictive. And there have been times just for my own personal satisfaction that I've just stepped away. I had a few years back stepped away from alcohol for about 5 months just to prove I could do it and there was no problem. And I can do that without too much problem. It's something I enjoy, and that's the extent of it. And that when I just saw my doctor this week and was discussing that, that's the extent of my vices. So I don't smoke. I used to have an occasional cigar until your sisters pled with me to stop having cigars because I was going to get cancer and die. And that's the extent of it. So, if people want to consume marijuana, in fact, I'm all in favor of legalization of marijuana because, quite frankly, I think marijuana should be the replacement for pain that opioids is currently. Yeah. And so I'm all in favor of allowing it, but just not something I've ever tried or have any desire to really do.
Now, us being completely out of this world and not having any experience with anything close to this, do we think this is the true reality or nature of what drug use, or it's the closest representation on film that you could get to what drug use is?
Well, you have drug use in this particular case, but there are examples all around: gambling addiction, sex addiction or addiction.
Sex addiction.
Sex addiction that are common and that you, I think, have opportunities to see. We've had alcoholism rampant in our family. In fact, I think it's between cigarettes or alcohol that's pretty much killed most of my dad's family. So,
well, it wasn't the electric chair, at least.
No, pretty much been up north where the electric chair isn't common.
And I think in terms of portrayal of what really it looks like, I think it always looks different, right? You've got so many people who are functioning alcoholics that really do have major problems, but nobody realizes. This is probably the ultimate portrayal of the worst of it, I'd say, but
right.
I think as being in terms of realistic portrayals, I think there's many films out there that do it. It's just a slightly different, different version of it, whether it's just somebody who's clearly got alcohol problems, or they show drug usage in multiple films. So what's a realistic portrayal? A realistic portrayal is anything that, I can't say the word portrayal today. Portrayal, God. Oh, realistic portrayal. It's anything that is representing real life. And of course, there's people like these 4 people out there. But there's also, we mentioned Nicolas Cage leaving Las Vegas, but people have also quoted things like The Basketball Diaries as being a good portrayal as well. It's one of the very few Leonardo DiCaprio films I haven't seen. So, what is realistic? Anything is realistic that portrays something that real people have gone through, and to them is showing their reality. So I wouldn't say this is any more or less, but I'm sure this is realistic for what it's portraying of those 4. This is absolutely feasible situation, I think, sadly.
Let's put it this way, okay? The large, vast number of situations involving addiction are not interesting. Unless you have an extreme, you have no film.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So some additional background for the film. Did you know? During Ellen Burstyn's impassioned monologue about how it feels to be old, cinematographer Matthew Libatique accidentally let the camera drift off target. When director Darren Aronofsky called cut and confronted him about it, he realized the reason Libatique had let the camera drift was because he had been crying during the take and fogged up the camera's eyepiece. This was the take used in the final print. Did you know? Darren Aronofsky shot the film like a hip-hop montage, a sequence of extremely short shots to get the sense of overwhelming addiction and loss of control. An average 100-minute film contains 600 to 700 cuts. This one contains over 2,000. Did you know? Director Darren Aronofsky asked Jared Leto and Marlon Wayans to avoid sex and sugar for a period of 30 days in order to better understand an overwhelming craving. Well, I don't know what their sex lives were like, but sugar is in fucking everything. That shit is hard to cut out.
There's lots of things published about Jared Leto's sex life.
I really don't want to know.
You don't want to know.
That is very true, yes. Did you know? Director Darren Aronofsky described this film as exploring different types of addiction. Quote, the Harry Tyrone Marion story is very traditional heroin story, but putting it side by side with the story of Sarah, we suddenly say, oh my God, what is a drug? The idea that the same inner monologue goes through a person's head when they're trying to quit drugs and cigarettes as when they're trying to not eat food so that they can lose 20 pounds was really fascinating to me. I do think that the split, and I mentioned it before, I agree with him that it became very apparent to me early on kind of what he was going for, trying to match these two kind of seemingly estranged storylines, but that they felt very thematically similar.
I find it fascinating that they've been able to tie GLP-1 or Ozempic, whatever you want to call it, you know, as far as weight loss. Not only does it help with the metabolism and the burning of sugar, but it destroys cravings. And now they're finding that it's helping with addiction to alcohol and other drugs.
Well, not just addiction to that, but just addiction, period.
Yeah.
The dopamine levels and recentering your brain and several other things. I think it's supposed to also help with inflammation of the brain.
Yes. It's also been identified as being a deterrent towards dementia and Alzheimer's, because sugar itself can cause, or has been linked, excessive amounts of sugar have been linked to dementia and Alzheimer's.
Did you know? In addition to having a camera mounted to her for certain sequences, Ellen Burstyn spent 4 hours every morning being fitted with prosthetics, wearing 4 different necks, both for fat and emaciated, 2 different fat suits, a 40-pound and 20-pound suit, and 9 different wigs. I mean, what is orange?
I like the one where the gray roots are showing
coming through. Yeah. If that's red, what is orange? Yeah.
Did you know? Jared Leto lost 25 pounds and befriended real heroin addicts from Brooklyn to prepare for his role. Because of course he did.
Of course he did. And I read that he, when he was with these addicts, they were shooting up heroin, obviously. He was shooting up water. And he said that was bad enough. Just the idea of just shooting up, even if it's just water. So there we go. Method acting.
Okay.
Whatever.
Rewarding bad behavior yet again. But that looks like a good spot for our first break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 286th episode, we welcome back our most frequent guest, Christine Duncan, to discuss Men of Honor from 2000, celebrating its 25th anniversary, only by her request. Directed by George Tillman Jr. Yeah, okay. Scott Marshall Smith. Cinematography by Anthony Richmond. Music by Mark Isham. Just all names everybody knows.
Yeah.
Starring Robert De Niro, Cuba Gooding Jr., Hal Holbrook, Anjanae Ellis, and Charlize Theron. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD.
Over or under 5 that I have to remind her of the name of the movie.
What a cast, though.
It actually has a surprisingly decent cast to the movie, and it wasn't a bad movie when I watched it with my parents 25 years ago, but it's one my mother has repeatedly brought up randomly that she really likes this film, but she's only seen it the one time.
No, we did watch it we watched it again when it was available on streaming. So we've seen it twice.
Definitely this film. It's not like she's got the name mixed up or something.
No, I remember watching it and know specifically what she's referring to.
Not like A Few Good Men or something. No, okay, all right.
No, which she also likes that film, but...
Yes, well...
Yeah. But she never can remember the name of it. I have to constantly tell her the name of it. But it's that film with Cuba Gooding Jr. Yeah, I know. Men of Honor. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
25 years of that. So, but okay.
But before we get much further, let's check in with our guest. Heather, what are you working on and where can people find you?
Well, I am everywhere on all socials. Heather J. Stewart, very unoriginal. Yeah, we already talked about the new, more content for Revisionist Almanac. Also got a guest spot coming up with Clarissa Beckstead on I've Seen That One. I'm going to be talking about Heathers. So Heather talks Heathers. So that'll be good. Another film that I've seen multiple times, but I've never actually spoken really about at length, and I haven't watched for ages. But yeah, that's coming up then. I'm on the initial draft, the new format that Andrew has over the Revisionist Almanac. We're doing the 90s. Yeah, that's also with Clarissa and with Adam Freed from Movie Archer. What else? And then we've got Little Miss Sunshine coming up, and also just a couple of months, beginning of the year. So that's coming up fast. What else have I got? Yeah, there's quite a few recent. I seem to have been in quite a few recent podcasts. So yeah, just wherever you find podcasts and just search my name. There's did something recently on The Sting with the movie The Needle Guys, Gone Girl with Mr. Rewatchability. So yeah, lots of content out there at the moment from me just talking. So yeah, if you want to hear my voice.
And for a larger explanation of exactly what she means by the movie draft, the Revisionist Almanac will be starting a new series of various content. I don't know how often he's going to be doing this and what the intervals are necessarily, but you're starting with the decade 1990. Well, 1990s. I should, yeah, plural there. And you're doing an Oscars draft. So it's going to be in the style of like fantasy drafts, I would assume, with a snake concept to it.
Yeah.
And you're going to be selecting various different winners to fill out like an overall ballot. So you could theoretically have, I think, and it has to be winners, not just nominees.
Correct. Yeah. So you're obviously going to pick Kevin Spacey. Clearly, you have multiple choice to take. You can take Kevin Spacey twice. Yeah,
you can have Kevin Spacey twice. You can have American Beauty as your overall winner, or maybe even Shakespeare in Love for your.
Actually, we are. So no. So to stop people doing exactly that, I think we're putting in a rule. I think that if you take the film, you then can't take it in any other category. So I couldn't take Kevin Spacey and American Beauty and Sam Mendes.
I see. But you could still have Mel Gibson in director. If you just wanted the most problematic.
It does not exist to me. That is just, we're just going to forget that entire year. That is, oh no. Yes, you could. Yes, I could also take Mel Gibson. I could, yeah.
Yeah, if you want the most problematic Oscars ballot of all time, and possibly the one that would win.
I might just do it just for fun. If I don't get my first couple of choices, I'll be like, you know what? I'm just gonna blow it all up.
But I believe I'm scheduled to be on the second version of that draft, which will be discussing the decade of the 2010s. I have no idea when we're actually recording that, but
I'm sure it's in the schedule somewhere. I mean, this does not sound that it would not be meticulously planned about when that's going to be. I mean,
are you going to have team names? Because if you're going to take, that ballot with Mel Gibson and, you could call it sexual assault and anti-Semitism.
Yes. Or just problematic. Oh, God. Yeah. I'm sure he would do well. I'm sure we'll find an actress in there as well who's highly problematic. Yeah. No. Well.
Yeah. I can think of a couple.
Yeah, you got to decide the strategy, though, right? I mean.
But that were winners. Yeah. Specifically
winners.
One.
Yes.
True.
They have to be winners. Yep.
So your strategy may not pay off there, and no, I don't think there are any team names. You're just under your own personal ballot, so the need for a team doesn't exactly make sense. But anyway.
Do you go for ones that you like and you want to have in your team, or do you?
No, I go for chaos.
Yeah, of course you go for chaos, right? So you go for or the ones that you think that everybody loves. So everybody's probably going to be wanting to pick Tom Hanks, I guess. I don't know, but we'll see.
I have a
chances to choose him though in the 90s.
I have a strategy for wild card that if I get the number one pick, I'm going to try and fuck everybody over. So I have a couple of really good wild card pick rankings, but you have to come up with a director, all 4 acting category awards, and picture.
Oh, I know what you're going to do. You're going to do editing and Bohemian Rhapsody. Right? Yeah. Although you can't because you've already got Rami Malek an actor. Probably.
What you do is you find an obscure category in the film that everybody wants to take something, a major actor or a major, or the film, and you pick that to destroy everybody's use of it.
I have my strategy. I've been doing fantasy for 26 years. And most times, half of my strategy, especially early on in like fantasy baseball, was to figure out which players that you really wanted and then try and screw you over. So I'm pretty good at this by now. But anyway, let's move to what everybody's looking forward to, and that is going to be the Cinema Legacy poll rankings for this week. Last week, we left you off at numbers 59 through 51. Just a quick recap of those. We had a tie at 59 between The Graduate and The Exorcist. That was our second to last tie. This week will feature our last tie of the list. Then at number 58, we had In the Mood for Love, 57, Interstellar, 56, Dog Day Afternoon, 55, It Happened One Night, 54, Rocky, 53, The Searchers, 52, The Sound of Music, and 51, The Princess Bride. This week, we will reveal numbers 50 through 41. So, without further ado, number 50 is the Coen brothers' first film on the list, and that would be Fargo. It will not be their last film on the list, however. Then we have 49. I'm sure the inclusion of this one to some people might be strange, but I believe it was on my personal best 50 ballot. And we have the Christmas classic Die Hard. 48 is our only film from the 2020s. We have Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. 47, we have our next Billy Wilder on the list. We have Double Indemnity, one of Dad's favorites. Then 46, we have our first and only inclusion of a David Lynch film. We have Mulholland Drive from 2001. 45, we have our next Western on the list and our only Sergio Leone film with The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly. I believe this is the first of my top 10 that has appeared so far on the list. 9 out of my personal top 10 made the overall list, but I believe this is the first one.
Yeah, way too low.
44, we have another of Dad's personal favorites, and you can go back to and listen to this episode of the show if you really wish. Gone with the Wind from 1939, the Best Picture winner. Finally, we have our last tie of the evening and of the list at this point. We have a tie between Some Like It Hot from 1959, going back to like our first 10 episodes of the show. I want to say this was episode 5 or 6. Before we really had the full format figured out and what we were doing with all of it. So if you really want to see the evolution of the show, certainly go back to season 1 and listen to that. But yeah, it's going to be, I would imagine there will be a revisit of that at some point in time. And then we have Seven Samurai. Those two are tied at 42. We also have an episode on Seven Samurai going back to, I want to say, season 2, maybe season 3 as well. I think all but Mulholland Drive on this list, we have discussed at some point during the course of the show. We have not done an episode on Oppenheimer yet, as it has not reached 5 years yet in the cycle to be eligible for selection on our show. But my dad would probably strangle me if I didn't put it on the list or scheduling for 2028.
Write me down to do that one.
Calling your shot.
Not so much preparation.
Yeah. But we did discuss that one, obviously, during our award season episodes back in 2023. You can go and listen to those if you really wish. They kind of are evergreen, but, you know, I mean, they're very much of the moment. And then finally, our last inclusion on the list this week, I personally think it is too low. I think this was in my top 10, so this might be the second of my top 10 that has made the list so far. At number 41, we have the Best Picture winner of 1946, The Best Years of Our Lives, including and starring Dad's namesake, Dana Andrews. So just a recap again. Number 50, Fargo. 49, Die Hard. 48, Oppenheimer. 47, Double Indemnity. 46, Mulholland Drive. 45, The Good, The Bad, and the Ugly. 44, Gone with the Wind. A tie at 42 between Some Like It Hot and Seven Samurai. And The Best Years of Our Lives at 41. Now, Dad, other than Mulholland Drive, have you seen all of these other ones? Because I believe we've covered all of them on the show.
Yes.
Okay. And you, like me, has not seen Mulholland Drive yet, correct?
No.
Okay.
I've seen Mulholland Drive.
So you've gotten in all of these?
No.
Okay, what are you missing this week?
Lots of them, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wait, let's go and think. Wait, hang on. I haven't seen Seven Samurai. I haven't seen The Good, The Bad, and the Ugly.
There are some Cinebros screaming into the mic right now.
I redeem myself with the whole Nolan Fincher stuff I have going on, so we're good. What else is there? I don't think I've seen Some Like It Hot. No, I probably have. I think this is one of these films. So my mom is like big, you know, she did TV on a lot at home and lots of old Hollywood, classic Hollywood, all these kind of, films from really long time ago, but all the way up to, 60s and stuff. So I'm sure this has been on, and I've probably seen it without really being aware, but I don't really remember watching it. And there's another one that I can't. What else? What was the list again? I've probably seen Fargo. Yeah, that could be it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, so there's a few.
Yeah. So, Dad, initial reactions to numbers 50 through 41.
Well, there are several films in this category that I think 2 were in my top 10 list, or maybe 1. I think 2 of them just fell out. So I think I had all of these, or had 3 of these films in my top 15.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I know I had a couple of them that were pretty high on mine, and I think I included quite a few of these in my final version. I know for sure that The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was in my top 10. I did not have Gone with the Wind, but I do remember, I'm pretty certain that Double Indemnity was like in the top 25. I think Oppenheimer was in the top 30 for me. I know Die Hard and Fargo were both on my list. So I think, and I know The Best Years of Our Lives was in the top 15. If it didn't make the top 10, it was definitely inside. It might have been like 11th.
It was 10 for me. And I think Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was like 13. And I'm trying to remember what other. I think Oppenheimer was like 15. So
some other quick notes on the list this week. Our third Christopher Nolan movie on the list so far. We only have one more of his to go on the list. I will let you guess as to which film that is going forward yet. And I cannot say exactly where on the list it will place, but that is still coming up. Oppenheimer, as I alluded to before, is our only movie of the 2020s to make the list. We had a lot of nominees from the 2020s, including this year. There were actually quite a few nominations for Sinners, but it ended up being on the back half of a lot of people's lists, and so it didn't quite end up making the list overall. I think, as you mentioned earlier, it's just really hard without the benefit of hindsight. As much as I liked Everything Everywhere All at Once, it just was not something that I really felt compared to some of these other ones that I've lived with and really bought into. But I think Oppenheimer's the only one I could really put my finger on and say, yeah, in the moment, you can see that this is going to be one of the great films.
Absolutely agree. I had Oppenheimer. I think if I was to do this in a couple of years, I would have Oppenheimer in top 10. And by the way, it's not my favorite Nolan, but I do think it's his best. So I had it just outside the top 10. And for that reason, it's like, I think a few years down the road, it'll be higher in my personal list, and may well actually even be higher in this list, because you just need to give it that time. But yeah, I think we were all, from seeing it, and we all had it on our list. So I think from seeing it and appreciating what Nolan was doing with that film, I think it was clear, okay, this is going to have its legacy. It is going to have its influence. So it's an easy inclusion. Whereas, as you say, other ones, it's just too early to say.
I'm pretty sure this is only one of the 2 Nolans that I put on my personal list of the best. And for my money, I think this is probably his best film. The other one, I will let you guess as to right now what you think the other film that I put down was, but it's likely that you probably can figure that out based on episodes of our show and what we've focused on to this point. So we had one more international film on the list this week. We only have one more remaining. Seven Samurai is our last Kurosawa film on the list. Officially, he has, I believe, 5 now. So High and Low at number 117, Ran at 108, Rashomon at 82, Akiru at 52, and now Seven Samurai at 42. He is currently the only person with 4 or more, and he will eventually be joined by at least one person before the list is done. But definitely a good showing for him as a international director. I think by far more than any other international director that we're going to have on this list.
For sure.
Our fourth Western of the list, with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, joining Unforgiven, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and The Searchers. We have 2 more Westerns to go. This is our 6th and 7th comedy movies, if you include Fargo as being a comedy, as I do, along with Some Like It Hot. We had Sherlock Jr., Inglourious Bastards, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, It Happened One Night, and The Princess Bride. We have one comedy left on the list, and it's inside the top 10. And it's not the traditional comedy that you might necessarily think of, but I would make a fairly strong argument that it is actually a comedy. We've had 3 more Best Picture winners this week with Oppenheimer, The Best Years of Our Lives, and Gone with the Wind. So far, we have 19 total winners announced on the list, 1 now from each decade. So we have 2 from the 1920s, 3 from the 30s, 2 from the 40s, 2 from the 50s, 3 from the 60s, 2 from the 70s, and at least 1 from every other decade thereafter, the 80s, 90s, aughts, 10s, and 20s. William Wyler joins Robert Wise as the only director so far to have 2 different Best Picture winners on the list. Robert Wise has West Side Story and The Sound of Music. William Wyler joins him with Ben-Hur and The Best Years of Our Lives. As I mentioned before, the Coen brothers have their first entry on the list this week, but they will have at least 1 more. We have only 1 David Lynch film for Mulholland Drive. This is the first and only Sergio Leone movie on the list. We have 2 more Billy Wilder classics in here, and he is far from done. So breakdown by director here. We have 5 for Kurosawa. We have 3 directors with 3 films apiece, Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, and David Fincher. And then we have a host of them with 2. William Wyler, Robert Wise, John Huston, Paul Thomas Anderson, Peter Jackson, Damien Chazelle, and Steven Spielberg. That is obviously subject to change as we get further and further up the list. Currently, by breakdown, we have 4 films from the 1920s, 4 films from the 1930s, 7 from the 40s, 7 from the 50s, 7 from the 60s, which I was not expecting, 10 from the 70s, 8 from the 80s, 13 films from the 1990s, 10 from the aughts, 9 films from the 2010s, and our only film of the 2020s. So any other thoughts before we move on?
I had Fargo in my top 10. I do love that, and it is a comedy. I completely agree. It is a very dark comedy, but
yes,
and it should have won Best Picture, but to add to that list, but it didn't.
It was one of the films that I showed my little sister during COVID that she detests.
Wow.
She hates that film because she didn't get it, and she hates The Departed, which I find funny because it's one of my favorites. But she hated the ending because it was too open-ended. It didn't have a true conclusion. Oh, well. You guys can give her crap the next time that she's on the show, which I think she's back up for our 300th episode of The General when we discuss that one in the spring. So far, the Gmote podcast has covered 38 out of the 82 listed films on the list so far. And for me personally, I've seen 68 out of the 82. I will be trying to make an effort to watch the remaining 14. I don't know if there is a single film on the list remaining that I have not seen. In fact, I'm almost yes. There is not a single film on the list from this point on that I have not personally seen. I mean, they're some fairly big names, so it's to be expected. Frankly, I don't know if there's a film on here that Dad has not necessarily seen.
The remaining ones. Okay.
Oh, excuse me. There is at least one that I can identify that he has not yet seen.
I could also have a look.
And there's one he hasn't finished. He got halfway through, but we didn't finish it.
Oh, not a good sign.
But anyway, all right. That closes the book yet again on the CLP. Next week, we will be taking you through numbers 40 through 31, and that will be the last drop of 10 before we start dropping it down to only 5 movies at a time.
I'm missing something in the top 10. I've just looked.
But otherwise, you can certainly follow any of our content at Gmote Podcast on any of our socials, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, YouTube, Blue Sky, basically all of them. And you can find all of the various content that will come out accompanying this episode there. Or you can find the full list on RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmote Podcast at the top of that site. So let's get back into our film for the evening. We left off at best performances. Dad, who did you have down?
I had Ellen Burstyn.
As did I.
3 for 3.
Oh, excuse me. I misspoke. She's my best secondary performance. I had the editor, Jay Rabinowitz, as our number one nominee, because I think so much of the style of the film is told through the editing. And I don't think it's just because I read it off in Did You Know that there are just an exceptional amount of cuts comparative to this story, but the way that the visual storytelling in going from certain visual cues, anytime somebody's shooting up drugs or they're getting high or, any number of things, there's a lot of just very quick cuts. And to me, that's to give an ambiance of the feeling of the movie, the hurried and erratic nature of what's supposed to come through here. So if I had to give it to one, not that Ellen Burstyn doesn't deserve it because she is my best secondary, but I have the editor here.
Yeah. I have that later mentioned, but yeah, no, I think it's an uncomfortable movie to watch for a number of reasons. I mean, not just the themes and what you're watching, but I think that is heightened by what he is doing. And these 2000 cuts is very well done. I mean, I mentioned Bohemian Rhapsody earlier. That was the most editing, not necessarily the best. This is the most, you said it earlier, but also really good. And it's part of the visual storytelling, as you also said. It works incredibly well to just have that feeling of anxiety with the viewer as well. It's just an uncomfortable watch. Things are not meant to be comfortable. That's what they said in the film. I watched it yesterday, actually. But this is very true of this film, and the editing and the cinematography and all of that plays that role.
So why did you both want to recognize Ellen Burstyn here?
I just thought her performance was very nuanced. It was very believable. I think it was very clear, and you could see her motivations. You could see everything about her. You could see her decline into madness relatively easily. I just thought she performed exceptionally well.
I think the transformation she goes through, as you said, the gradual decline, but just this, the close-up shots of her, you can see that she's really living that character. It's all a lot of the eyes, from place to place, or just, her looks of longing that she sometimes, gives when Harry's there, and just these wide-eyed looks. Of course, it's partially to do with the drugs, but also just, her wanting that happiness is just so layered and so, I think, hard to do. And I don't know what her, history of anything, if she has this history with this, kind of diet pills or speed or, whatever. But that's got to be hard to portray if you've not been through it. And I just think she does an incredible job.
I would agree. I think that the difficult part in her portrayal is that unlike the other three characters who seem to be in their own storyline, the fact that for the most part, I want to say 80% of the film, she doesn't have to act against anybody else. And so that always makes it just a higher degree of difficulty to be able to react or give certain facial cues, which I think she does aptly here. I think there are a lot of very small variations and subtleties. We're going to discuss one of the scenes, but when she's sitting over the breakfast table and she's got the half a grapefruit and the one egg, and you just see her kind of like unravel slightly, overseeing how little it is and what her other appetites are. So it makes that storyline more believable by the point where she tries to take the easy way out. I don't have to change my eating habits, but then I get to not do the work and still get the results. Makes it all that much more impactful for you as you continue through this film.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about this as well. But also, yes, she's acting, but when she's acting with other people, how she still kind of almost has that innocence about her as well when she goes to the TV studio and she's acting opposite them, and I don't even know if she realizes what's wrong with her. She's like, oh, I just want to be on television. I just want to, you must have my application somewhere. And she's just got this like innocence almost about her. And this is genuinely what she believes. And clearly she's going through this horrible like descent into not necessarily like madness in a way, but she has issues which they recognize, thank goodness, at the TV studio, but and then send her off to hospital. But or when she's not being acknowledged by people, but she's still there and they focus on her face, like when she's in the hospital and they're clearly just talking about, I don't know, taking the trash out or whatever they're talking about, this very mundane conversation over her head and just getting on with it. And she's still there and you see her and it's, her still reacting to it. It's brilliant. Yeah, I think.
Dad, what was your best secondary performer?
Jennifer Connelly. I thought her performance carried a lot of the film. You had sympathy for her. You could see her personal struggles and ultimately what she was willing to personally sacrifice in order to fuel her addiction.
Heather, who did you have?
I also have Jennifer Connelly. Yeah. I almost put her into charismatic, apart from the fact that I don't find anybody really charismatic because they're all awful. But she holds your attention whenever she's on screen. And I know a lot of it is through the choices they make with her, the change of her makeup and everything, because she starts off very fresh-faced, very innocent in a way. And then gradually as the makeup gets darker, what she's wearing is darker. It's, it ends very much with almost like the black lipstick and very heavy eye makeup. So that's just a kind of gradual change in how she is portrayed. But she just holds your attention. She has that scene in the bathtub, which is just heartbreaking. Jennifer Connelly is just a wonderful actress anyway. I just think, there's obviously a very beautiful woman. And so you do feel inclined to watch her and look at what she's doing. But I think she's, you were talking about the middle class, upper middle class. That's kind of where she's also kind of coming from, right? She's coming from that rich background. So maybe is she the most relatable to any one of us with our backgrounds, like not having been in poverty or whatever? Maybe, because we've not taken drugs, so we haven't gone down that route. But from a background perspective, everything has been given to her, handed to her on her plate. In a way, they say that. Maybe, but yeah, she's just mesmerizing, I find, in this film, and just so you really do feel sad for her, even though ultimately, as we said before, it's choices.
Which is why I have her as my most charismatic. I think she's one of the most, frankly, appealing people in the movie. Everybody else seems very well strung out, and even in her, I guess, depths of depravity, she's still a very appealing person. Not solely because she might be one of the most beautiful women ever to be on screen and has become somewhat age-defying in a way that is stupefying, but she's only a year away from winning her Oscar, and yes. I don't think it's necessarily a mistake. I know maybe that's not the movie performance for everybody as far as Best Supporting Actress wins for A Beautiful Mind, but you can definitely see that there's some talent there. And I think that had she not taken, I think she took some time out for when she had her children, that she could have had a much more profound career, because she is just stunning as an individual to hold your attention at any one time in this film.
She's my most charismatic also. And I still think back and remember her from Once Upon a Time in America when she was, I think, 14 when she first was in that film. And so, yeah, one of my personal crushes.
Pretty much everybody's, right? Well, yeah. Oh, yes. Well, I didn't want to double up because I said, Jen did consider Jennifer Connelly, but then I ultimately went with I couldn't decide between editing or cinematography. I just wanted to go for the whole crafts of the film, which I think really do make it. So we'll say editing, because we talked about that as well, because I think that is what makes a lot of the film be what it is. It's what holds your attention. It gives you that sense of anxiety. Maybe also what makes people want to turn off, perhaps. I don't know. But to me, it was what really propelled that film through. And as I said before, there is a case of most editing and best editing, and I think this one combines the two.
This is the first time in recent memory that I can think of that we didn't have a writer-director nominated somewhere in here. Is there a reason none of us went with Darren Aronofsky?
Well, that's what I was saying when I was saying I just want to always take the entire crafts, sort of particularly the editing, the cinematography, and the score, which is three separate people. And do you say, well, at the end of the day, it's the director that brings all of that together as one whole. And should I therefore then say Aronofsky? So I considered it, yes, because at the end of the day, he's the one who, it's his vision, and he's working with these people who he clearly trusts because this is his regular cinematographer and musical, accompaniment. Yeah, so.
I think the reason that I didn't go with him at any point during this nomination process is because I think you can single out individualized performances or individual parts of this that may have worked for me, but you can't necessarily, in my opinion, say the whole thing worked for me. And so by that extension, I kind of discount the director. And unless one of his major contributions, either writing or the direction, becomes the thing for which I give him a lot of credit. So like, had the script been really good, which I'm not so much high on it here, then he might have gotten in somewhere for me. But I just don't find that to be the case here.
I think it's more of a case with Black Swan, which remains my favorite Aronofsky. I think that's more obvious. I think I agree with you. There's parts of the script that I would take issue with. I think some of the writing and I don't know whether it's a combination of just Jared Leto just being Jared Leto, or whether he just really gets crappy lines, but some of his line readings, but also what he's actually saying are just, it's poor writing to me. It doesn't, I think there's one particular point where he just says, "Oh, for Christ's sake," the whole time. And it's like every second line he's saying that. I'm like, oh, come on. This is not how people talk. This is bad writing. But again, it might just have been the whole line reading of the Jared Leto of it all.
Yeah, I don't want to discount Aronofsky here because there are other films of his that I do appreciate, particularly Black Swan and The Whale. But
the problem I had is, and I pointed this out at the beginning of the film, which is Aronofsky had the volume set at 11 on this. And I think it was a little too much. I think you would have made a more compelling story if it would not have been so... He felt it necessary to make it so artistic.
All right, let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here. I have Hawking the Television, which is kind of the sequence that opens the movie where Jared Leto is trying to take the television from his mother. They go to the pawnbroker on the boardwalk, it appears, and then she eventually buys it back from him. And that, to me, is the first expression that this is kind of a usual pattern between the two of them, that he takes it there, she buys it back. So in essence, she's enabling and funding his drug use. And I think that starts this cycle of different things within the movie, recognizing that this is kind of an unusual pairing of characters. The dieting, which I've already mentioned before, when she has the first day with her diet book, she has the egg and the grapefruit, and you go from they're both there to they're basically within a quick cut, basically a snap of the fingers, to being gone. And you just see the pain in her face that there's not more food here for me to eat. Then I have the scene that I think for the most part will be most prominently mentioned. I have Harry comes over. So the conversation between Burstyn and Jared Leto here, where they're across the table from each other and trying to recognize that they're both getting close to achieving what they want in their life, their goal, their dream, if you will. But you can already see the cracks forming between where they're both at, so that when the second half of the movie comes, it's not really that surprising. I have Attack of the Fridge, which, if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then I have Crashing Out, which to me is like the final montage of all of them cutting, intersplicing basically the end of each of their stories and what happens to them. So is there any other scene here that either of you would like to add or nominate?
Yeah, I can also bring it up with favorite, but to best, I do really love the scene, which I also mentioned earlier, when Sarah's at the TV show, where she's, she leaves her apartment, she's going to the TV show. She's then on the underground, and she's thinking, it's the way to Madison Avenue, and nobody's like really, they're either like just ignoring her as this is what happens. This is very realistic. This scene is just what you do if you see somebody like that, or just calls her a wacko or whatever. And then she arrives at TV station, and then they're almost sympathetic in a way. And then her desperation and this innocent, as I also mentioned earlier, I just want to be on television. And they said they were going to get in touch. And like, oh, they camera down, like, no, it can take a while. It can take a while. That is just, I think that's a really good scene as well. Like from the apartment all the way through with the travel to the TV station and then at the TV station. I would add that one as well. And I think it probably like belongs with it's the kind of the end of the crashing out. So when they all then assume that fetal position at the end is just, I think that's very haunting. So maybe that's more the indelible scene, because that really stays with me. I do really like the scene we haven't really talked about him very much, but Ty with his girlfriend in bed, and then he goes to the mirror and he's kind of clearly thinking about his mother, and then she says, oh, what are you thinking about? Why aren't you coming? Oh, I'm just thinking about all the things I'm going to do to you, sort of thing. And it's just, yeah, it's we haven't really talked about him very much, which is what you're saying, because he's it also could have been like charismatic. There's something about Ty that I do kind of like, maybe more than the others, I don't know. But yeah, I think that's a good scene. But I think probably we're going to say the Harry scene, and not because of Harry, but because of I think it's because of the monologue. Ellen Burstyn's, what she says about growing old, and I just want to be in television, and the red dress and the sun, and yeah.
All right. So out of these 7, hawking the TV, dieting Tyrone and his girlfriend, Harry comes over, attack of the fridge at the TV station, and crashing out. What is the best scene?
To me, it's crashing out, because that's the payoff. You had to endure through this montage of pain and suffering to reach the conclusion as to see what exactly all of this led to.
I would agree. I think everything in the movie is leading to that moment, and it has to pay off for this movie to work for you at all. I didn't quite get the same out of that everybody else did in order for this movie to mean something to you, but I recognize that in its essence, it is the most pivotal scene in the movie.
So I think the best individual being in one location scene is the one with the monologue with Ellen Burstyn, just because it's, it's really probably was her Oscar clip, I guess. And for the message that is conveying and what actually it's all about, as I mentioned earlier, that is her goal. It's the red dress and what it stands for. I agree with the crashing out if we're saying, okay, we're counting that, because although it's multiple different, locations, what it's showing, that is what remains with you. And it's also the accumulation of all the accumulation of the editing and the cinematography and all of this, what we've already mentioned, coming together, the score, which we haven't really talked about, that is all brought together with this very fast cut between all of them. So it probably is the scene that does sort of portray, if you like, not only the film, what it's coming to, but also all the skills that have come together within this film as well, that are just, I think, very masterfully done.
In each one of these 4 closing scenes depicted something different. For Wayans, it's he lost his freedom. For Leto, he lost his health. For Burstyn, she lost her sanity. And for Connelly, she lost her innocence and her self-respect.
Yeah, I suppose that takes you through the entire spectrum of everything that you'd probably stand to lose. Favorite scene for me, I'll go back to the one that Heather just mentioned, the sample monologue, because I think it's the most emotionally cathartic moment in the film, that you see the, I wouldn't say passion, but the desperation of wanting to feel like you matter. particularly in the timbre of her voice as she's talking about that, even though she supposedly has friends in the building, that she's a woman who sits and watches TV by herself all day. She doesn't really have anybody else. And to finally be recognized by people that they're giving her a certain level of attention that she's never otherwise had, you just feel the sympathy or the empathy toward her for, oh my gosh, you poor woman.
For me, my favorite scene is the dieting scene, because I think it is the one that's most relatable to the everyday person watching the film. It's where something innocuous, you want to lose some weight, and how it can start the path towards addiction and losing everything.
If we're talking favorites, not indelible, we're talking favorites, I still would say the curling up all of them into the fetal position. I think that is, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I like it, I mean, really, because of what it stands for, but I do think it's beautifully done. And I've got something else written down that I can't read.
Well, how many times has that happened to you now?
But I'm so old school, I have to write it down. Otherwise, I can't type it up and like read notes from there. I've got something. Oh, Connelly in a bathtub I've written down. I can't even say that's a favorite. I'm talking indelible now, because do we come to that separately? Because if, you know,
might as well,
because that's where we are. I don't even know if favorite is a word, but yeah, her in the bathtub, which is the copy of the film, is it Perfect Blue animated film, which was influence on this film. It's copied entirely. Aronofsky got the rights to be able to kind of basically copy it. That is just so heartbreaking. And we've talked about, you know, Connelly and her downfall, and you were saying earlier, Dane, about, you know, how, you know, her losing her innocence and her self-respect and everything. And then that bathtub scene is very defining in there as well, because she's, you know, done this awful thing, sold her body ultimately, and then you see her from above, just like completely naked, completely stripped down, and just screams into that bathtub. And I really, that's such a haunting image in that scene. So that's definitely one that sticks with me. And of all the horrible things we see in this film, that arm is absolutely disgusting. I can't look. When he's about to shoot himself into the arm that's all like gone all purple. That's where I look away. I can't watch that. So the whole arm, I can't even say it's indelible, because I don't think I've actually seen the bit where you see the full extent of it.
Yeah, I would agree that the most indelible moment is the last section of the film. Everything leads up to that point, and it's the lasting thing that you take away from it, which is, again, is the point.
Of course.
I concur. I'll just leave it at that. I don't have much to add. That's by far the most indelible to me.
All right, that looks like a good spot for our second break. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 257 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Ace Frehley, American musician, lead guitarist for Kiss. Ed Williams, 98, American actor and comedian, Police Squad, The Naked Gun, Father of the Bride. Yolanda E. Lawrence, 56, American television writer, Empire, Riverdale, Bel Air, The Good Wife. Samantha Eggar, 86, British actress, Return from the Ashes, The Molly Maguires, Dr. Dolittle, Oscar nominated for Best Actress for The Collector, 1965.
So we recognize these here fondly for their contributions to the arts, with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's go to best funniest lines, of which there is not much fun. But I will take the easiest one off the table. Sara Goldfarb. I'm somebody now, Harry. Everybody likes me. Soon, millions of people will see me, and they'll all like me. I'll tell them about you and your father, how good he was to us. Remember, it's a reason to get up in the morning. It's a reason to lose weight, to fit in the red dress. It's a reason to smile. It makes tomorrow all right. What have I got, Harry, Why should I even make the bed or wash the dishes? I do them, but why should I? I'm alone. Your father's gone. You're gone. I got no one to care for. What have I got, Harry? I'm lonely. I'm old. You got friends, Ma. It's not the same. They don't need me. I like the way I feel. I like thinking about the red dress and the television and you and your father. Now when I get in the sun, I smile.
Marion, getting the money's not the problem, Harry. Harry, then what is the problem? Marion, I don't know what I have to do to get it.
I had to do this one, so excuse me. Big Tim.
Oh, no.
I know it's pretty, baby, but I didn't take it out for air.
Oh, Dad.
Oh, dear.
Sorry.
Sara Goldfarb. In the end, it's all nice.
Sarah, if this is red, I want to know what's orange.
Mr. Rabinowitz. Such a son. Your mother needs you like a moose needs a hat rack.
Harry, somebody like you can really make things all right for me.
Sarah, I'm Sara Goldfarb, not Albert Einstein, which was not on the IMDb list of quotes.
Marion, I love you, Harry. You make me feel like a person. Like I'm me. And I'm beautiful. Harry, you are beautiful. You're the most beautiful girl in the world. You are my dream.
Sara Goldfarb. How come you know more about the medicine than a doctor? Harry Goldfarb. Believe me, Ma, I know.
Sarah. Purple in the morning, blue in the afternoon, orange in the evening. There's my 3 meals, Mr. Smarty Pants.
I'm out.
I have one left. Marion, anybody want to waste some time? You have any left, Heather? All right, then let's move on to the Stanley Rubric. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out. So 2005 to today, roughly the last 20 years. What is the legacy of this film as shared between the audience and the industry? 5 and 5 points apiece for each of those two groups for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second here?
I'll go first this time. I think this film helped, again, move Jennifer Connelly's along ultimately, but that's more in the impact and significant over the next few years. But I think it did make Aronofsky capable and set him on a trajectory over a decade or more to be making other films like Black Swan and The Whale. So I think that does impact it somewhat. Ellen Burstyn's career kind of lasted a while longer, but in the short term, or in the more of the legacy of it, I don't think it has a lot of legs. I don't think that this established a style or a theme or a look that was followed. I don't think it ever had anything that really made it possible for other films like it to exist. I just don't see a whole lot. So for the industry, I'm at a 3.5. For the public, I don't think it's had any impact. I don't think this is a film that most people think of or have seen. And outside of cinephiles, I'm not sure how many in the general public even know about it. So I'm, for the public, at a 2, so I'm at a 5.5 overall for Legacy.
Okay, so we have a 5.5 on the board. And before anyone has to ask, what were the results of the famous office poll this week?
Well, because we're recording out of sequence, I didn't get to do an office poll on this one.
Yes, that's right. It wouldn't happen until Monday, and we're recording early on a Saturday to accommodate our European correspondent this evening. But that being said, I don't have a ton different to say. I think, yes, you've identified the one thing that I can really take away from this film as somebody who has a larger legacy because of the movie, and that's Aronofsky. I think everybody else in the film, like Jared Leto, does not have a reputation for being warm and fuzzy or a particularly likable person necessarily. He still gets acting positions, but it's not because he was great in this movie. He's frankly not. And Marlon Wayans was doing other stuff. The fact that he's in the movie is fine, but it's not like his career was made or not on this movie. The same with Jennifer Connelly. So really, if there's anybody that gets any sort of boost from this movie being somewhat recognized and critically acclaimed, you could say it's Aronofsky, because he does eventually go on to do other stuff. Would I say this is the turning point in his career where he really takes off? No, because there's still a decade-long march from this to Black Swan, where I think he really does get near the top of the apex right around that time. But he has a few varied films before then that I think you could say his body of work overall adds up to him getting those chances, and eventually that's his true breakthrough. Because again, this is like the 157th movie at the box office. It was not going to be played on cable anywhere. Even on HBO, I think they would have been like, no, I think we're good. So from that standpoint, I just don't think it's seeped into popular culture. The song or the score somehow did, and I have to make a small tangent and addendum here. Every time the rhythm or the chorus of the score played, which I think most people know by this point, all I thought about was my high school fake documentary film that's available on YouTube. If you can find it, it's buried and not well labeled, and certainly under a username that I don't currently have access to and would have a hard time trying to figure out. But it's there, and I didn't pick the musical choices for that film. We sold copies of it around the school. It actually made a decent profit on the film because we were just screwing around for a class one time. But it's a fake documentary on how I, a 5'4", 5'5" on a good day, white American, overweight basketball player would make it to the NBA and be a lottery pick out of high school, which of course is absurd. But my dad can tell you exactly that it was worth the 13-minute watch that it was. But there's this song prominently plays in the film. And I didn't pick the music. I had no idea why they picked that particular song. I still have no idea what the name of the song is necessarily, but it was brought in for that effect. So every time it played, it reminded me of high school, which was not necessarily a good thing. But that being the case, I don't have a whole lot there. I think there's actually a good section of cinephiles who have not seen this film. So I actually give it lower than you on both of these relationships, Dad, and I have it at a 2.5 and a 1 for a 3.5.
Whoa.
Okay.
All right. Huh.
I'm going to set the tone here that I might be a little bit more difficult than normal on this film.
I think the legacy is certainly growing, that if you ask people about this film, cinephiles, so the industry and the experts and everything, they do rank this very highly. I mean, we've got 29th in the editing, all this being listed in top films of the 21st century. Also, the Aronofsky you've already mentioned about his career, but also the cinematographer Matthew Libatique. He is now standard works with Bradley Cooper. You mentioned his name, and he in the industry is a known name. I think people were like, oh, okay, his latest film. I mean, to people who care about that kind of thing, it's not obviously not a Deepens or anything like that, but he is somebody who I think who has, through his work with Aronofsky and now Cooper, certainly made a name for himself. So I actually have industry at a 4 for this. So okay. I'm quite high. I do have public a lot lower, although I think now it's very, very hard to say. I think a lot of people have heard of the film but have not watched it for reasons. It's a film that, people might say, oh, Requiem for a Dream, oh God, yeah, no. Like, they've heard of it. That's my experience. As I say, that's just from my circle of experience here, that they've heard of it, they've not watched it. So what does that mean in terms of legacy? I mean, it means that they have heard of it. So it is a known film. You've already mentioned the score. That's been in multiple, that song has been in multiple films, adverts, also sports, not just even also, coming on to, which is kind of bizarre, coming on as a motivational song, coming on to the chord or whatever. So yeah, I've very high. I've got 4 and I've got 3.5. Ooh, which feels very out of sync with you lot, but maybe that's just how I interpreted it.
Well, that's going to work out because that comes to Dad as the median point at his 5.5, and that will be the average between the three of us.
No difficult maths then. Oof.
At least not on this first one. Impact and significance here. This is a measure of the initial 5 years that we just discounted for legacy. What was the impact and significance of this movie within the initial 5 years, roughly 2000 to 2005, as shared between the industry and the audience? 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. I will go first here since Dad led off the last category. I think it does have a little bit of industry recognition among the critics at the time. Again, they kind of propped this up. It was entered into the Cannes Film Festival, although it didn't really win anything, and the one nomination for actress, okay, like you can give it some credit there, but the point of fact that nobody really was, in my mind, truly boosted by this film. I think Aronofsky gets the one bump, but it's slow and it's not instantaneous. Like he gets some, not in the way that some directors, like they do one film and all of a sudden they get signed to do a Star Wars or a Marvel film these days. It's not quite like that. This is more, he slowly got opportunities to do bigger and bigger things until probably where he, middle of the 2010s, probably overdid a couple of things. And I think some people still have some controversy over a particular couple of films in there. But with that being said, 157th at the worldwide box office. Nobody watched this. It did make a profit, but it was probably out of only the major cities. It definitely was not playing in the rural areas, I can almost guarantee you. And I just can't think that anybody had any major overlap. So I'm at a 2 for the industry, and I'm at a 0.5 for the public on this one for a 2.5.
For the industry, the fact that Ellen Burstyn won the Academy does give it bumps up.
She did not win.
Or,
she was nominated.
It was nominated. Excuse me. Misspoke. Was nominated. Does give it a bump up. It had good reviews. I can't go down to your level. And I do think Jennifer Connelly's career was boosted. And I think she had a nice run that started with this film. So I'm going to give it a 3 for the industry, but I'm going to give it a 1 for the public. And the only reason I go up to a 1 is because it did make a profit. It doubled or tripled its budget. So I'm going to go with a 4.
Yeah, I'm not overly high on this one. I'm a lot higher on the longer term legacy of the film, because I think in retrospect, a lot of people have come back to it and said, well, maybe Burstyn should have beaten Roberts. Maybe, if it was released today, it would probably have got nominations it would have got a lot more recognition, I think. Like, he would have probably got cinematography, editing. He would have got, I think it would have really, if you look at other films like The Substance or whatever, I think it would have possibly got 6-7 nominations, quite frankly, if it was released today. It wasn't, though. It was released in 2000. And as you said, nobody saw this film. So, well, actually, I seem to be starting with the public here, actually. So, yes, the public, I'm at 1.5. Nobody saw it. Industry, I am also higher. because it got the nomination for Burstyn. It got a lot of critics prizes. Connelly also got some nominations. If you look at the time, it was got great reviews out of Cannes, but then it got to the Academy Awards and it just got blanked, apart from Burstyn, of course. But so well regarded, but from the critics and in the moment and in Europe, but then not so much at the Oscars. So I also have a 3 from the industry at the time for the first 5 years, which is what, 4.5.
So that's a 3.67 average between the three of us. Novelty on this one. This is a measure of the originality of anything having to do with the film, although it can also mean things beyond the subject matter, but usually that's where we've come down the most often on originality. And then the execution of the film. 5 and 5 points apiece again here for a total of 10. Is anybody rip-roaring to start here? All right, I guess I'll just go again. I do think this is high on originality. I don't think that this is the only or the first drug story, but I do think that this is a unique one, even among that very tiny subgenre, and expresses itself in a way that is a little bit more visual and trying to take you inside the experience of maybe being on drugs in a way that I don't think other films had to this point. It is somewhat fever pitched in that way. And so I have that at a 4.5 here. However, on the execution, I think there are individual performances that are great in this. We mentioned Ellen Burstyn. I think the editing is actually fairly well done for what it's trying to say and what it's trying to do. I don't have that much of a problem with the music other than my association, and so it's a little distracting to me personally, but I can't imagine that it's a problem for anybody else who doesn't have that weird high school connection with it. And I guess other than Jared Leto, who's just horribly miscast here and misused and frankly shouldn't be in something like this so that he can self-destroy, I don't know if it executes at quite the level that I'm expecting something that would really hit me over the head in the way that I think this has for other people. So I have that at a 3. I have a 7.5 here.
I'll go. I'm probably going to be the high person again. Although Tom was actually quite high. Novelty, completely agree. I think it's very original. Sure, there's parts of it that you say borrows from the hip hop, or that scene I mentioned with Connelly borrows from another film, or the snorri cam, the camera in front of their face that had been used by Spike Lee and by others. But how it's used in this film is part of the storytelling. It becomes a character. The editing, the cinematography, the score, they are characters to themselves within this. And I think it certainly influenced other films going forward where you see that being more used. I mean, it's hard to remember, okay, which ones had used it in 2000, whether, it's a fisheye lens, which I know a lot of people are using nowadays as well. Who did it first? Who did it in such a way that it influenced others? So I think in terms, and also, the pure despair of this story, there's no hope really at the end, which kind of is the point as well, but also not really something that was done. And you see a lot more of that nowadays where really, it's just a bleak films and that is it. So I have also have 4.5 for the novelty. Execution, I will agree with you on Leto being the weak link here. I don't think he's all bad. I just think some of his line readings are way off. I think the taxi scene, when he's had that monologue scene with Sarah, his fake crying is just really not great. So he's a minus point. But everything else in terms of the editing, we've also talked about cinematography, all of that coming together, I think is top notch. And as I say, it is an extension of the film. It is there are characters and they are what make the film what it is. So I'm at a 4 for execution.
For a total of?
What did I say before? 4.5? 8.5.
I have, for originality, I have a 4 because I think you mentioned it. I just don't go quite as high as you, Tom. This is not the first drug movie, but I thought it was quite original in how it was telling the story. And I think adding in the method of addiction outside of heroin or some hard drug was a real big motion or movement forward as far as originality. But I still don't give it more than 4. So on originality, I'm at a 4. Execution.
Hold on. But you still don't give it more than a 4. Why?
Because there's just not enough here that's a completely fresh
you
and
mentioned
original.
A point that was above any of ours, and we both had it at a 4.5. It was a good point too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll give originality. Then I'll go up to the 5 because I think you're correct. I think I was inconsistent with myself, so I'll go to a 5. But execution, as I indicated, I have a real problem with because, again, I thought it was a little bloated. I thought it was a little too artsy for what the subject matter was. I really had a problem with Jared Leto overacting. Half the time I was expecting him to stare into the camera and make some weird face like he's breaking through the fourth wall, because that seems like the way he acts a lot of times. And so I just I did not like the execution overall. I'm going to give it a 3 at execution. It wasn't perfect, but overall I can't have a big problem because there's enough here to like that I don't want to go lower than the 2.5 that would be halfway. So I'm going to go there. So I'm at an 8.
And that ends up being, well, you're not at an 8. Oh, no, you are at 8.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. And you split the difference between the two of us, and that ends up becoming the average for a total of 8 between the three of us. All right, let's move to classicness. This is a measure of basically how well the film has aged or not. We started at a baseline of 6 to give us some room to move down in case something has just aged poorly. But this category lives in a realm of nuance that we have one particular person who loves to live in the gray, no matter their objection to that phrase. Dad, would you like to go first here?
Well, generally I do. And so I'm going to go at the 6, start with the 6. I think that even though this is 25 years older, the rise of opioid addiction and heroin, this still is very prevalent. So I would normally go up. I'd give it at least 2 points up for that. The problem I'm going to have is I'm going to go back down a half a point because the only one who goes to jail is the black guy.
But he's not the only one who loses anything either. And technically one is in a mental ward. So that's a kind of prison.
I understand, but come on. It's a little too stereotyped for me. I mean, I just have a problem with that. You know, well, and so
the original source material is from the 70s. So
yeah, true.
I understand, but I'm saying it's a half a point. Okay. It's a half a point.
I'm not disagreeing with your point.
I'm looking at the time frame and I'm giving it consideration of the time frame. So I can't go down. I can't give it. I got to take something off for that because I just found it a little. So I'm at a 7.5.
Okay. I'm at a 9. I think the opioid connection, I believe that it's just now old enough for us to establish some level of timelessness. I think it's ahead of its time on the subject material. And I really don't have anything derogatory to knock this on other than just Jared Leto being kind of a weird and difficult human being. But even that, I'm not going to take anything off for. So I'm at a 9.
Yeah. Same. I agree. It's timeless. And they've also said, I believe Aronofsky said in interviews, he specifically clothed them in certain ways that it would age well. There's no real obvious musical cues or any reference really to completely age. I think there was a reference so this film, there's a reference to Madonna, but other than that, nothing really that would age it anywhere. And the themes are timeless, relatable in some way. And yeah, showing, I think, what we were saying earlier about the novelty and showing Sarah's downfall is just very different to the classic heroin, cocaine, crack, whatever that we might have seen in the past. So yeah, I'm also at a 9, and my minus points are because Jared Leto is a terrible human being, I believe.
In fact, in thinking about this and just reflecting for a second, I'm going to go up a half a point on this, for nothing more than the scenes involving Jennifer Connelly and the businessmen, because that in and of itself reminds me of something that would possibly exist yet today. Because I just
hate
have that.
When you do this shit.
Why?
I had all the calculations half done and trying to put this all together. Not only the average, which was a clean 8.5, but now you're going to fuck that up. Go on, continue your point.
Anyway, I just thought of that scene and I'm going, that could be done yet today. It could be done anytime, because I just anticipate those businessmen sitting there paying money to watch the two of the girls go together like that. That just seems the slimy way things would be going on yet today. So I'll give it a half a point up for that scene in and of itself.
So that is a 8.67 average between the three of us. Let's go to rewatchability. Insert your own subjective finding of rewatchableness on this yourselves. Will come to me last as the, let's say, person attempting to be more objective about this movie.
This film I've seen. It doesn't matter. I probably will never watch it again. Although, if somebody really wants to watch it or ask me about it, I would sit through and watch it again with them, type of deal. So generally, I'm at a 3 with that, and that's where I'm going with this, because I'm not going to go anything less than that, because I would rewatch it if there was a reason. But I'm not going to go out of my way to ever rewatch it. And quite frankly, it sticks in my head that I don't need to rewatch it, because I think I will remember most of this movie for a number of years.
Well, I'm a very sick person. And
you're not supposed to say stuff like that. You're British. You're supposed to be understated.
So I just like bleak films. It's terrible. I know you're all like saying, oh, we don't want to watch other people suffer. And it's like, and I'm like, yes, suffer. No, I don't mean it like that. That is not, but I don't. Yeah, this is just basically the kind of film I like. I like quite depressing films. I watched this. So I think I discussed my history with the film. I watched it, I think, for the first time back, I want to say like 2010. So it's around the time that Black Swan was also out, but also around the time that a friend of mine, who I know does listen to my podcast appearances occasionally, so she will know who she is, she was massively into 30 Seconds to Mars. She took me to multiple 30 Seconds to Mars concerts with, obviously, our friend Jared Leto. She was like, oh, and Jared Leto, and she watched this thing that he was in when he, around, just before this, what's it called, My So-Called Life, I don't know, something like that. Anyway, so it's like, oh, and he's done these other films and everything. But I don't know if you ever watched Requiem for a Dream. I was like, okay, well, I'll watch Requiem for a Dream, Jared Leto, see what else he does. This is more my kind of thing than a teenage drama series. Yeah, so I don't even know if I got through it that time, because I didn't remember all of the details. So I watched it again, almost like new, this last week or so. I'm like, well, I need to watch something twice to be able to make my notes. And I watched it another time. And I'm like, oh, I'm discovering new things. And then I almost, yesterday, was like, you know what? I actually feel like watching Requiem for a Dream again. So there's no helping some people. Okay, I didn't go the full watching something 5 or 7 times, like a certain Mr. Corns, okay? Like Salo or whatever you watch 7 times. That's just beyond. I did not do that.
To be fair to him, he did say that I think he would only watch this once if he had to do the prep for this movie.
But Salo, he watches 7 times. Fine. Now we know. Now he's revealing things about himself. Okay. So, but I know that it's not about my personal rewatchability because we've established I'm rather sick. So I think I have to say, for me personally, I would watch this anytime. This is fine. I'd have to be in the right shape of mind for it, but right frame of mind. Sorry, I'm not going to recommend it to everybody. Absolutely not. I think you have to say if you're going to recommend it, like they have to be aware of what they're going to watch. Anyway, but I'm still going to say, yeah, it's not overly watchable for general. So I'm still going to. I'll say a 5. There you go, somewhere in the middle.
Okay, so we have a 3 and we have a 5. Now, yes, there's a little bit of subjectivity when I go through my analysis of this. And I have to be saying, but to the average person who doesn't watch this level of film, the artistic flair, the visual styling, I would say general lack of a very understandable plot. Like this movie is a little bit rudderless as far as a huge overarching story or plot. There's not a huge amount of things that happen per se. Like you can condense the plot very easily down to a few things. So with that, the subject matter, the difficulty of the last part of the film, and how generally bleak this is considered, I do this somewhat to keep myself honest, but I would never suggest this to any other average person who wouldn't have to go out of their way to watch this. I personally have no desire to see this again unless I absolutely have to the point where I would turn it off if it ever came on, because I just don't feel like I need anything more out of this film. I'm going to give this a 0.
Knew it. I knew it.
Ooh. Let's just say this, okay? Your mother asked if I wanted her to watch it with me. I said, no, I will not subject you. Well, she came in and sat down and watched about 15 minutes of it while she was waiting for our pizza to bake in the oven. She came back and she said, how much more of this weird shit are you going to have to watch?
That's exactly my point.
Yep.
I mean, just so we're clear, the 5 points for me is all from me, and the 0 is I'm agreeing with you, Tom. You know, so I split my rewatchability between subjective, me personally, and general audience. So I did the same as in the other areas.
All right. So that brings us to audience score here. For audience score, we had an 89% for Google users and a 93% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us a 9.1, our highest category of any on the rubric. So to recap the categories here, we had a 5.5 for legacy, a 3.67 for impact and significance, an 8 for novelty, an 8.67 for classicness, a 2.67 for rewatchability, and a 9.1 for audience score, giving us a final total of, if it'll work, it won't work.
Again.
Son of a... Okay, well, I'm now officially pissed about this. Because everything else will work, and this... Yeah. What the fuck? Anyway. All right. Giving us a final total of, and you'll have to imagine the drum sound or drum roll effect here because it's not currently working on the soundboard, 37.61, and currently placing it on our list between Dodgeball at 236 and The Usual Suspects for number 237 out of 257 on the list.
I actually thought, based on some of these scores, I think that actually was, I was figuring it was going to be lower than that.
I don't remember The Usual Suspects being
the classicness must have pulled it up.
Yeah.
Well, the classicness and the audience score.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
To be fair, of other movies we've covered this season, I mentioned The Usual Suspects. This is higher than Coal Miner's Daughter. This is higher than Saw was last year and Joker, which are both significantly lower. But this is about 10 plus points higher than Shampoo. So for whatever it's worth, 237 out of a current 257. Take what you can get, I guess.
To be fair, I mean, we were kind of complimentary about, I mean, I was generally very complimentary, but even, you were about, there's certain parts of this that you just have to respect. You don't have to enjoy the film. You don't have to ever want to watch it again. But there's just things that are undeniable in there with, the camera techniques, or even if it is a little bit too much, but, at least what they're trying to do, or the performances, most of them, or just, clever parts with the color and all this, how that's contributing to the downfall and the difference in, what they're trying to do. And maybe it is a bit artsy. I see where you're coming from, but it's a lot of it that works, and I'm saying that very, coming from my kind of high stance on it. I think even if you don't like the film, you can still appreciate a lot of what's being done. And by the way, a lot of it, something was said about the editing, and I wanted to make some snarky comment about the fact that the editor also did Tree of Life. I think it was a negative comment about the editing, and I was like, well, oh, that's right, that it has no real story to it or anything. So I was like, oh, just like the other film he edited, Tree of Life. Sorry, who's the high man of that? I think it was Peterson. Sorry, Peterson.
Oh, shots between guests. Gotta appreciate it. As always, if you have any further commentary for us, good, bad, or otherwise, you can email us at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website, ronnieduncanstudios.com/GMOTpodcast, or you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, TikTok, or Blue Sky at the handle @GMOTpodcast. Let's move to remaining questions on this one. I have a few here. Do any of these people recover?
I think there's hope for Ty at the end. He's in jail, but you have to assume in jail he's going to be going, obviously, off the drugs. I don't know how long he's going to be in jail for, but I'd like to think that there's hope for him. I think she's lost her mind. It's hard to say with Marion if she ever gets out of that. Her smile when she's hugging the drugs at the end, it kind of makes me think, no, that's going to be her life now. She's found somebody that gives her drugs in return for these, sexual acts. And I know they've removed Harry's arm, but there was the comment that they didn't think he would last the week. So who knows? If it's just by removing that arm or half of it is help. But if any of them, I think I'd like to hope there's some hope for Ty.
I mean, the American penal system, no. I mean, once you get out of prison, you're basically damaged goods as far as society in America is considering. And so he can have some form of a life, recover from his drug use, if you can call it that. But he's not going to have much of a quality of life. That's the only place I would disagree. The other ones, I have no general disagreement with any of the analysis there.
He does have a shot, but it'd be very limited. He will be on parole for a while. That'll enforce his soberness from drugs, sobriety. Yeah, I understand he's going to have some limitations, but it's not going to be that he's going to be at a white collar professional level, but unless he's in the psychology or the drug abuse field, because there is a stronger acceptance there of somebody who's been through it. But, he could have a quality of life in a more blue collar manual work environment where that's more acceptable. But he's probably got the strongest opportunity.
Okay, question number 2. Now, this is supposedly a TV show, but in several of the notes and the descriptions of things, it's a game show. What kind of game show presents itself like that? It's more of a televangelism, self-help guru TV show, and I don't really understand how that's a game show. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Did it really? No, I presume it does, because when she first starts watching it, she's still, she's not taking any drugs or anything yet. But part of me thought halfway through, did this ever really even exist? And also when she gets that dodgy phone call saying, "Oh, you're going to be in television," how does she know it's for that? Or do we not even know it's for that? And we just assume because if they keep showing this, juice for Sarah, juice for whatever. And I don't know, it seemed to be almost part of the whole drug hell and the hallucinations that this just really played into it. It was very bizarre.
Yeah, nothing about that is understandable to me. Again, this seems very much like a Tony Robbins seminar that you'd see on YouTube or something, or for that matter, Frank T.J. Mackey from Magnolia, Tom Cruise's character, which I don't need to do the impression again. You can go find that. It's widely available. But otherwise, yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me. So I think
it was supposed to be to blur the distinction between televangelism, game shows, and self-help, so that it didn't matter what part of this you followed. It was all about the same thing, which was to draw in people to watch.
Oh, ultimately, what we were saying about Sarah before, taking advantage of that kind of mainly women, right? At home by herself, just watching television, daytime television all the time. Yeah. And that's the kind of crap.
The home shopping network is definitely hypnotic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and, I shouldn't say this, but I mean, the reason why,
why do you set yourself up for failure like that?
Okay, well, part of the reason why people who are home watch Jerry Springer is because no matter
we're doing
how
this
bad
again.
their lives are, it's better than the people on the show. And I think that's what's drawn into the reality TV show.
Okay, Maury Povich. Any other questions for either of you? Okay.
One question. I do actually have one question. Sorry. Wait. Do you think at the beginning of the film that Marion is clean? Like she doesn't take anything. It just starts gradually in the film, because I always got the impression at the very beginning that she'd never taken anything, but I think opinions vary on that.
I guess I'd never really considered it. I kind of assumed that she had, because she was hanging around with them and they seem to have been people who did it on a regular basis. So it doesn't feel like it would be a foreign concept necessarily, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. I got the impression that her hanging around with them was to do with wanting to kind of rebel against her parents. And
well, sure, I think it's part of that, but I think there's the way that the relationship is depicted here makes me believe that they've been together for at least some time. And if they've been together for some time, I don't think he's hiding a particularly big aspect of his personality and identity away from her in that repute. So minimally, she would know that he does it. I would have think, depending on the length of the relationship prior to this, which again, I think there's a good chance that you're at least 6 months, if not at least a year and a half, then she would have also done the activity with him at some point because of the relationship. And she, instead of trying to like rescue him, would have gone into his psychosis or his magnetism as part of his personality and identity.
Yeah, I think the reason I thought that is because you haven't seen Trainspotting, but there's this character in Trainspotting who he was always the kind of the clean guy. Like everybody else was doing drugs, but he was the guy who was playing football every week. He was, he had a nice girlfriend, all this kind of good stuff. And something bad happens in his life and he goes, oh, I just want to try it one time. I want to try it one time. And then his descent is so rapid and so extreme compared to the others who have just been kind of living with their heroin addiction, which is fairly bad. But he is the one that really has the tragic and very, very rapid decline and gets almost more crazy addicted than the other ones are, which it just reminded me a little bit of the Marion character, because she's the one who almost seems the most desperate to get that hit at some point. When she says, "Oh, you're a fucking loser," she says to Harry at one point when he doesn't get the drugs she was expecting. So that's all.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I want to thank our guest for being on with us this evening. For you, I guess it's the middle of the afternoon for us. But you won't be back with us again this season, but it won't be that long because you will be back in January with us. But go ahead again and tell the people what you're working on and where they can find you.
Well, yep, I'm at Heather J. Stewart everywhere. I have a couple more podcast appearances coming up the rest of this year. I've seen that one, as I mentioned before, and with Revisionist Almanac, doing more with them next year. So yeah, lots going on. Got to work on my own schedule of content. So yeah, looking forward to it. And we have a little bit of sunshine as well in January.
All right. Excellent. Glad to have you on. See you again in the new year. But Dad, any remaining thoughts for the week? We'll try and keep these brief given the runtime that we're already on.
Nothing.
Okay. I will tell you that by this point in time, I have finished the last Bond film, so the pressure is now squarely on you.
Well, I'm going to have a weekend home alone coming up, so that probably will be a good opportunity for me to rattle off the remaining films.
Well, we'll talk about that here upcoming, because that may not be the case.
Okay. So.
Just saying. But
somebody pressuring you?
We won't go into that on this show since she's the next guest up, but yeah, more or less.
It's perfectly fine. I'm okay.
Anyway, so that looks like it'll do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. Why do you want this so bad? Because they said I couldn't have it. Next week for our 286th episode, we welcome back our most frequent guest, Christine Duncan, to discuss Men of Honor from 2000, celebrating its 25th anniversary. Directed by George Tillman Jr., written by Scott Marshall Smith. Cinematography by Anthony Richmond. Music by Mark Isham. Starring Robert De Niro, Cuba Gooding Jr., Hal Holbrook, Anjanae Ellis, and Charlize Theron. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, TikTok, or Blue Sky at the handle @GMOPodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.